The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. A Manta Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden, Brian. And I wonder if we may have to change it to New Defenders Dialogue soon.
You know what? I think we will after this week's show. Today we're covering issues 124 and 125. These are a milestone in Defenders history because, as Chris just said, we see the end of the non-team, the end of the group we've known since way back in Marvel Feature, and the birth of the new Defenders.
I will say also the awkward birth.
It is awkward.
Yeah.
It is.
And so firstly, I want to say Excelsior. I don't want anybody to think that I forgot the true believers out there, the three people who listen to this show. But yeah, it's really interesting, and we'll get more into that also in the next episode, because I just read the issues for next episode, and I'd forgotten how strange. I mean, we think that this book has been weird, and it's in the 123 issues that we've previously covered. But somehow, miraculously, it gets stranger.
It does. It does. Before we dive into issue 124, J.M. DeMatteis himself reached out regarding our last episode with two notes.
Yes.
Now, we had talked about the character of Seraph. She's one of the mutants that works for the Secret Empire.
Yeah. And
you and I had thought she was the same Seraph that had previously appeared in X-Men and Kazar. It turns out no. That issue of Defenders was her first appearance.
Okay.
So I remember seeing her at some point in Marvel fanfare. Although, you know, now that I'm talking about that Kazar X-Men crossover Marvel fanfare, maybe that was Siren I'm thinking of rather than Seraph.
Maybe.
I don't. There's so many damn mutants. You know.
Well, I mean, the other thing I want to point out...
sound like Trump there. Build a wall. Keep out the mutants.
Keep out the mutants. Well, I mean, that really, he is a character from Marvel Comics, only come to very unfortunate life. If only we could cancel that title.
The strangest sentinel of all.
Yeah. The dumbest sentinel of all.
But DeMatteis also wanted to let us know, you know, we were talking about the elves with a gun, and of course Luann Bloom being revealed to be a robot.
Yeah.
And there was a line that, you know, that DeMatteis had included in the dialogue about other robots believing they were human. He says, and I quote, "I think, and it's been a long time, so I can't swear, that was just a throwaway line," end quote. So, you know, Chris, if you and I ever get the chance to write for Marvel again, there we go. We can bring back the other robots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing is that, of course, there are LMD stories, SHIELD LMD stories, where SHIELD LMDs thought they were, like, there was a Nick Fury LMD who thought he was actually Nick Fury, you know?
Yep.
But I I also want to say I love the fact that that we're being fact checked. So folks, this is what happens when you're not fake news. You allow yourself to be fact checked and you correct your errors.
Exactly. I do this I don't want to say every week, but when I get something wrong on the Horror Show with Brian Keene, I make sure we run a correction.
You mean when someone else involved in the show gets something wrong? Because you, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I should correct that right now. When Mary or Dave or Matt get something wrong on the Horror Show,
or Dungeon Master.
Dungeon Master never gets anything wrong. He is my blood.
By the way, I read this morning about an interesting dream you had.
Oh, you did?
When you were speaking in your sleep.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Are you unaware of what I'm talking about?
I am only assuming. For listeners who don't know, I live with author Mary San Giovanni. I'm assuming she posted something on Facebook, but I haven't yet seen it. Why?
Yeah, it was something. I wish I could remember the actual quote without checking, and we don't have time to check. But it was something like that you said in your sleep. It was something like, "I tried to be that arrogant, but I couldn't do it."
Oh, I'm looking at it right now. It says, apparently in my sleep last night, I said, "It's impossible to be that arrogant, but I gave it a good try."
Literally, that needs to be on your tombstone. Oh my God!
I don't know. I talk in my sleep quite a bit, and I'm known to get up and walk around and do things in my sleep as well. She's caught me going out the door before in my sleep, but I don't have any memory of it. But,
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look. Let's talk about Defenders. I want to start by saying. This cover to the Defenders 124, which features prominently Angel, Warren Worthington from X-Men fame, Beast also from X-Men, Gargoyle, and Valkyrie, is one of my favorite covers from this series. And even though it's not called the New Defenders, it heralds a new direction in the covers that we're going to see. There's a sort of starker, more regal element to the way that the covers are presented going forward,
and it's almost it's almost a transition from the Bronze Age into the modern age of comics. You know, you and I grew up with word balloons, and I always point back to that iconic Headman issue of the Defenders. Where the whole thing is word balloons, and this is very minimalist. It's just the characters, not really showing any of the action going on inside. And of course, most modern comics are like that now.
Yeah, no, it's a great cover though.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the splash page inside is great too. Of course, we get the credits: Jam DeMatteis as writer, Don Perlin and Kim DeMolder as artists. And I have some thoughts on that we'll get into later, particularly in issue 125. Janice Chiang is letterer, Christy Scheele is the colorist, and we open where we left off. The elf with a gun, I should say one of the elves with a gun, because now we know there's more than one, have brought Silver Surfer, Namor, the Hulk, and Doctor Strange to the 24th century, and they're standing on a barren, decrepit wasteland that mirrors Mars, but it turns out it's actually Earth. And the elf with a gun explains that the four of them caused it.
Well, you four jerks caused it, is how he presents it. Rightly so. And then Namor reflects my response to this, which is this: enough is enough, my friend. He grabs the elf and it wants to beat it out of him. He just wants a plain spoken explanation, which I think we all do at this point.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he tells him that, basically Earth is about to break up into little asteroids. And the Surfer says, this cannot be. And he hops on his board and he flies around the Earth really fast. And he says it's utter lifelessness and desolation everywhere. And Namor demands to know, what about the oceans? And the elf with a gun teleports them to the oceans, but it's just a dry desert. And Namor loses it. Exalted Neptune, where is the justice in this? Your hallowed seas reduced to dust. And Doctor Strange wonders how. And in answer to that, the Tribunal appears.
A classic floating head in the sky, which teleports them to stand in front of the Tribunal, which reminds me in many ways of things like The Prisoner and a fantastic episode of The Twilight Zone, whose name escapes me now, which makes me sad. But it's this, they're standing in front of the Tribunal, which is an enormous dais, so high that the people of the Tribunal are just shadows above them.
Right. Now, this is the Tribunal. Technically, it is not their first Marvel Comics appearance, as we will find out here in a second. But
Right.
This is the first time their true nature is revealed. And that's from the Silver Surfer. He says, the Tribunal. I've heard vague rumors of these beings. Even my former master, the planet-devouring Galactus, spoke of them in awed whispers. So much like the Grand Master and Galactus and Eternity and all of Marvel's other cosmic characters, this mysterious Tribunal ranks up there, perhaps even above them.
Yeah, and when they disrespect the Tribunal makes reality, or they at least cease to exist for a moment. They're not dead; they just cease to exist, which frightens even the Silver Surfer. We cut away, Brian, to another group of defenders, and there's a really interesting thing coming up that I'll mention when we get there regarding the Vision and the Scarlet Witch. Don't let me forget when we see them last in these pages.
I will not.
Beast, Iceman, Gargoyle, Vision, Scarlet Witch, the Mutant Force are being taken away in Leonia, New Jersey, the home of Vision and the Scarlet Witch. They're trapped in these null fields, and they're taking them away to what appears to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. Holding facility. Right,
and when you say the Mutant Force, we should clarify because it's going to come into effect next issue. Cloud, Seraph, and the old lady, the witch.
Paradin.
Yeah, that's it. It's the three of them that S.H.I.E.L.D. is carting away.
Oh, right. Sorry. But we will see Mutant Force as well shortly.
That's right.
In any case,
which I'm sure you're thrilled about because I know how much you love them.
Love them so much. Anyway, and Hank McCoy mentions that the Secret Empire is back in business, and they talk about how the Secret Empire once kidnapped the X-Men. In fact, and then how the Secret Empire went up against Captain America and Captain America 175, and Beast is saying, Vision, it was you they wanted this whole time. We've got to be ready for them now. If you want to throw in with the Defenders, now remember the Beast is trying to formulate a full Defenders team, a sort of real Defenders team. But Wanda says, the Vision says no, and Beast is like, what? And Wanda says, just what he said, Beast. No, the Vision and I left the Avengers to build a life for ourselves as man and wife, not superheroes. We're private citizens now, Hank, the Vision says, and aside from our status as Avengers reservists, we wish to remain that way. And the Vision's saying, look, there's S.H.I.E.L.D., there's a lot of other superheroes, we just want to live here in Leonia, New Jersey, and be left alone. And they go back in their house, and they close the door. In the letters page at the end of 125, our next issue, it's revealed that until this moment, and again, maybe Jam DeMatteis will hear this and argue the point, but on that page at least, it states that until he's writing this moment, that DeMatteis did not know whether the Vision and the Scarlet Witch were going to join the Defenders or not, which I find interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, we definitely need to ask him about that when we have him. We're going to have him on.
Yep.
When we reach the end of his run here.
Well, and I harken back to the fact that you remember when they did that poll of characters that readers wanted to have in the Defenders more than others, or who should be members of the Defenders. And at that time, these characters hadn't even appeared in the Defenders. And they ranked in the top 5 or 10, both of them did. And so it was natural that they should appear, but I think really interesting that they then do not go on to become members of the Defenders. But
Right. So we then transition somewhere in time back to the original defenders standing before the tribunal, and the tribunal explain themselves. Basically they exist outside of time and in all times. They are antibodies of the universe. They seek out disease in the cosmic body, and if possible, they eradicate it. So they came across Earth in the 24th century, and they found a world that had once thrived. On it, a race of people with the potential for godhood, a people stamped out before their time had come. So the tribunal decides to investigate what happened, and so they enter the time stream. Beings as powerful as they are cannot travel through time without causing repercussions. So they bred an army of time agents.
Yes, and of course, let me just say, full stop. I'm interrupting you.
Okay.
Because this is where I'm like, I don't know, as you do, I don't know J.M. DeMatteis. I don't know whether he was on serious drugs in these days.
Well, he did used to write for Rolling Stone.
But I got to this point, and I'm just like, okay, so the Tribunal are this small cluster of beings who are just as powerful as, or potentially as powerful as, creatures like Galactus.
Right.
And they exist outside time and space.
Right.
Like Doctor Who times 100. And they discovered that they needed to travel through time and space in order to sort of police, the multiverse and the time stream. And in order to do that, they bred their own race, their own army of time agents, who they just happened to decide to make look like little goateed elves with no pants and little stocking caps with puffballs at the end.
Makes perfect sense to me. Now, they even admit here, they say, with our humanoid forms came humanoid limitations and the capacity for error. Thinking that the elf was a key symbol constant to your world's history and cultures, we molded our agents in that image. Soon after, so they
we molded our agents in that image because Steve Gerber had the elf with a gun, and I decided to bring him back. And then I realized, I need to figure out a way to explain why he looks like an elf.
I think this is beautiful. We get this.
I think DeMatteis is giving himself the biggest Marvel no prize of all right here.
I agree, but we get an elf with Primitive Man. We get an elf during the Black Plague. We get an elf in a gunfight with a cowboy in the Old West, and the tribunal say the elves seem to engender confusion and chaos wherever they appear.
I wonder why.
It doesn't get more meta than that. Remember the letters pages during Hubbard's era? The confusion and chaos that the elf with a gun caused among readers?
But this is why you need an Elf with a Gun series, because you could go throughout Marvel history. Like,
I agree. I mean,
it's the Elf with a Gun versus the Rawhide Kid.
Yeah, exactly. Elf with a Gun versus Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy. I mean,
Now they've introduced these prehistoric Avengers. For a little while, he was a member of that team.
But seriously, if you think about it, regardless of culture, regardless of continent, regardless of religion, reports of little people have been with humanity since we learned to write.
Absolutely.
Every culture has a report of little people. We call them different things. But so I see what DeMatteis is going for here.
Well, listen, wait. I agree with you, but I can picture in my mind the conversation between J.M. DeMatteis and the editor of this issue or of this series at the time, Carl Potts, in which Carl Potts challenges him and DeMatteis flings at him the explanation you just gave, sort of off the cuff, as a way to get away with this. Now,
it still doesn't explain why the elf with a gun was going around shooting people with that gun, and then we get that from the
we do get that explanation. Go ahead. By the way, nobody take this as me anything but loving all of this. I just think it's hysterical that it's like it's bonkers. But go ahead.
I remember reading this as a teenager and thinking it was the greatest fucking thing ever. And reading it as an adult, I'm like, holy shit, he wraps everything up.
Yep. Oh, that's the miracle of it. But go ahead.
But yeah, so it turns out the Tribunal figured out there were a group of human beings whose lives were, in minor ways, pivotal to the destruction of the Earth. So they sent the elf with a gun, with his time displacement gun, to remove them from the time stream. But as longtime Defenders readers know, back in Defenders 46, he was run over by a truck before he could finish that.
So you see, the elf with a gun was never murdering people. He was a good guy, saving the world.
So Namor, much like Chris, has had enough of this. And he decides to just fly up and punch the Tribunal. So he goes flying up, and the Tribunal nearly kill him. And he drops into the arms of the Hulk, who instead of, jumping up and following Fishman, remember, this is now an intelligent Hulk, a Hulk possessed with the intellect of Bruce Banner. He urges Namor, please try to control yourself.
Yeah, I love that line. Will you please try to control yourself?
We then get, and again, I think this is fucking genius what DeMatteis, he not only wraps up Steve Gerber's interrupted run, he makes sense out of all that stuff that Ed Hannigan was doing. Remember the mysterious Tribunal? We thought they were the government. Remember they captured Jack Norris and Mutant Force, etc. No. It turns out that whole time, it was really this Tribunal.
And we thought it was the Secret Empire.
Right. They were trying to get information on the Defenders because they figured out that it wasn't those humans the elf with a gun shot with the time displacement gun. It was the Defenders that were somehow connected to the destruction of the Earth.
These four Defenders.
These four Defenders.
The originals.
So they quizzed Jack Norris, they quizzed Mutant Force, and then after that, they needed firsthand knowledge of the group. That's when they brought in a ringer, Luann Bloom, who we thought, was introduced as Kyle's nurse. Then she became Kyle Richmond's love interest. As we find out, she was a robot working for the Tribunal, and when Nighthawk was killed, the robot had a breakdown.
And she's having another breakdown now.
That's right.
Even though they put her face back on, she's having another breakdown now to the point where she's freaking out and the Tribunal tells the elf to shut her off. And so much like C-3PO, he literally just touches her head and she just shuts off. And says, come on, doll, it's back to the scrap heap for you. Yeah. Too bad you don't have pointed ears and shorter legs, though. We could have made beautiful music together. I'm like, oh man, yeah. So even though the Tribunal bred these guys, whoever actually was the one in charge of it gave them very interesting personalities.
See, I think that they've picked up those personalities from their time on Earth interacting with.
Yeah, that could be true. Yes.
Anyway, Doctor Strange. He's now had enough of this too. But unlike Namor, Doctor Strange, he just levitates to the top and he tells the Tribunal, let us see the proof. And the Tribunal show him the proof. It is the future, October 1983 to be exact. Dr. Strange finds a crashed spaceship. I'm just going to fly through this, Chris.
Yes, please.
Okay with you. And he finds a bunch of humans inside this spaceship, and the aliens have them in these tubes. And Doctor Strange believes that, they're somehow harming these people. When we get a closer look, we find out the people in these tubes are the same people the elf with a gun was removing from the time stream.
Right.
And what we find out is that this alien force came to Earth, and their prince contracted some kind of Earth disease, probably a cold, like in H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. And what they're doing is they're siphoning off some of the bioenergies of these abductees to cure their prince. Doctor Strange deciding to free these people. He's gonna find aid for the prince and free these people, but the aliens shoot at him, knock him out, and so he sends out his astral form, and of course, as he's done in 124 issues of the Defenders, he summons Namor, he summons the Surfer, he summons the Hulk, who show up, destroy the ship, free Doctor Strange, and then the aliens commit mass suicide.
Yeah, it goes all Jonestown in there.
Yeah.
And Namor says, suicide, but why? And the Hulk says, that's a good question, Namor, why? And the elf says, if you're looking for a good answer, you'll be back next issue for a special 38-page extravaganza. So the elf here, clearly Deadpool is a member of this race because he breaks the fourth wall and tells the readers to come back to read that extravaganza featuring the wedding of the year, the return of the Mutant Force, the end of all life on Earth, the demise of the old Defenders, the birth of the new Defenders, and look, just be here if you know what's good for you.
Well, we're here. Why don't we get to it?
We can get to it, and it's now on issue 125. The price is $1, and the title is The New Defenders. The logo has changed on the front cover, and we get Iceman, Angel, Valkyrie, Gargoyle, Beast, and Moondragon all on the front cover. And this is our lineup for a while, Brian.
It is. It is.
And we'll talk more next episode about that lineup because it really takes hold then. But
it's important to point out, of course, Nighthawk is dead. And, we're about to see the departure of Doctor Strange, Hulk, Surfer, and Namor. The only original member left is Valkyrie from this point forward.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and of course, she wasn't in the very beginning, but yes, she is the senior member by many, many issues at this point.
Right.
Very interesting. And of course, this issue 125, written by DeMatteis, drawn by Don Perlin and Kim DeMolder, is titled "Hello, I Must Be Going."
Right. Now, I had said earlier in the show that I had some thoughts on Perlin and DeMolder's art.
Yes.
For issue 125. I had these thoughts as a teenager, and rereading it as an adult, I still have the same thoughts. This issue feels so rushed and so compacted to me.
Yeah. Not only rushed, and again, I normally you'd think a 38-page issue would take us a long time to go through, and I don't think it will. Partly because it's all business.
It is.
It's all like, okay, let's wrap up all the explanations, get rid of the original Defenders. And that's why I'm glad you kind of went quickly through the whole thing with why the original Defenders can't be together anymore. Because it literally is nothing but a MacGuffin. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's just a way to keep them out of the book.
The art seems rushed, particularly when we get to Damon and Patsy's wedding. And, the text is not rushed. In fact, there's a lot of text here. But I think using the narrative trick of having the elf with a gun narrate the issue, it don't get me wrong, I'm a huge J.M. DeMatteis fan. The man is one of the main reasons I do what I do for a living.
But it bogs it way down.
It does. It does a little bit here. I would have loved to have seen this breathe for a few issues more.
Yeah. Well, in any case, we get everybody gets caught up to speed, partly because it's issue 125. A number of readers were jumping in for the first time in a while, I'm sure, because it's an anniversary issue. And then, Doctor Strange goes up against the Tribunal. He says, I have seen into the essence of the Tribunal. He opens the Eye of Agamotto and examines them. They allow it. They are what they claim to be. And they go through again. He goes through the explanation for what happened. Anyway, we cut away.
Yeah. Basically, so, the Defenders bury the aliens. They give them a proper burial. And the alien ship then self-destructs. And, the defenders return all of the abductees to their homes. But the planet that these aliens came from, they find out that, the prince and his force that was with him are dead on a planet called Earth, and they're not having that.
Yeah, I mean, so, and it's all interesting too, because I don't know if we saw these aliens again, but one would think, given the description, that you would see them again. So if J.M. DeMatteis writes another Marvel series at some point, I think that we need to see those aliens again.
You know what? Actually, if I remember correctly, I think Keith Giffen used them during Annihilation. They weren't a major part of it, but I think he.
But they did pop up again.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, Giffen and DeMatteis together, that's like, Golden and Keene. I mean, it's two great tastes that taste great together.
Hey, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. In any case, then we come to the first time in this issue that we've seen what will be the Defenders going forward. The elf with a gun is there, and he explains to us that Iceman is attempting to land this Quinjet on a New York street. There are two cars hogging 2 spaces apiece, so Isaac Christians flies down and moves the cars out of the way so Hank can land the Quinjet.
Now, there's one thing, Chris, that you didn't tell folks.
That Iceman and Beast are drunk?
Yes, they're drunk driving in Avengers Quinjet.
And then they're drunkenly, arms wrapped around each other, they're drunkenly singing The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down.
So we have 2 superheroes.
I feel like this is you and Tim Levin at a convention.
That completely went over my head as a teenager. And rereading it again this morning before you and I recorded, I'm like, so they're fucking drunk driving Quinjet. And it turns out that Gargoyle has stayed sober. He's been babysitting the 2 of them all night. But they burst into Dolly's house, which is, of course, the current Avengers headquarters. And Beast kind of starts to sober up because he finds, who does he find standing there in the house?
He finds none other than Moondragon. One of the reasons I love Moondragon is that Moondragon, in many ways, at least in most of the times you see her, is a woman ahead of her time. She is a woman who gives 0 fucks about pleasing anyone, particularly about pleasing the males around her. Anyway, Moondragon is the daughter of Drax the Destroyer.
From Guardians of the Galaxy fame.
Yes, she's of Titan. In any case, we see her, and Beast sort of drunkenly thinks that she's attacking them, so he attacks her. Iceman comes in, does the same thing. She smashes him aside. Gargoyle comes in, blasts her with one of his energy rays, only to have Valkyrie run in and explain that this is a terrible misunderstanding.
That's right. Beast and Iceman, who have had previous interactions with Moondragon, they're like, oh, please say you're kidding. And Valkyrie asks Moondragon, she says, woman, did you not explain your presence here? And Moondragon says, I am not a mere woman. I am a goddess of Titan, and a goddess need not explain herself to anyone. I feel
like that's a meme ready to happen on social media.
Yeah.
A goddess need not explain. Our friend Hillary Monahan, I think, needs to have that as a T-shirt and needs it to be her banner on Facebook. I'm going to tell her that later.
I'm going to tell author Wiley Young, who is the master of making memes, that in the meantime, please make Hillary a meme of that panel.
Yeah, with Moondragon, I think.
Yeah. But then my favorite female character, who I think embodies this spirit better than Valkyrie or Moondragon, and that is, of course, Dolly, comes bursting in. She says, good grief, what's all the racket about? Can't I get sleep anymore? And Moondragon says, who is this churlish malcontent? And Valkyrie explains basically. Why don't you go through the recap here of what Moondragon's doing there?
Well, so basically, Valkyrie explains who Dolly is. She's the housekeeper, and she's sort of the heart and soul of the Defenders. What Moondragon is doing, I get what you're saying. So, some months ago, Moondragon battled the Avengers on the distant planet Babani, which sounds like something on Howard Stern, where she sought to use her...
Babani.
Exactly. She sought to use her vast mental powers to telepathically force a lasting peace upon that world's inhabitants. So Moondragon is yet another member of that school of thought that, her great powers means that she can make things better by forcing people to behave, which never works. She actually fought Drax the Destroyer, even though he's her father, and she killed him, at least in this iteration. She killed Drax momentarily. In any case, since Moondragon fancied herself a god, Thor brought her to hallowed Asgard, there to be judged by Odin. That was Avengers 220. So, we recently saw Valkyrie called back to Asgard for Odin to ask a favor, and this was the favor. She now wears a headband that actually makes her head look like some kind of strange egg thing. She's bald, by the way, for those who aren't reading.
Right.
And it looks like her head could be opened. The headband makes it look like it's like a Fabergé egg. You could just open the top of her head. But in any case...
Would she be a great addition to the headman?
Yes. Anyway, it limits her mental powers, this headband. So what she'd like to be doing right now is completely controlling all the Defenders and making them do her bidding because she thinks she's better than everybody else. But the headband is preventing her from doing that.
Yes. So Valkyrie helps her up and, offers her compassion. Moondragon forces her away. Spare me your divine compassion, Brunhilde, and storms off. The Beast picks up his puppy and tells Valkyrie, no way is that loony bird living here. And, Valkyrie tells him, we must go slowly with Moondragon, Hank. There is a frightened woman hiding beneath that cold, godly exterior. And they all go stomping off to bed, and Dolly's like, wait a minute, I have news. And she puts her foot down, and she's trying to tell them the news, but before she can, who else appears?
Well, Iceman and Beast are drunkenly stumbling up the stairs, and to their wondering eyes would appear but Angel, Warren Worthington. It's a reunion here, Brian. And what's really interesting to me is that, the creators at Marvel in this era didn't have the original X-Men. There was no book that included them until the birth of X-Factor, which is actually in the not too distant future. And the birth of X-Factor, indeed, is, I think, what causes the end of this series. But for now, people could get their monthly dose of X-Men in the pages of the Defenders, or the original X-Men, because you have 3 of them right here, 3 of the 5. And this, they hug. The Beast is dancing on the banisters, singing "Happy Days Are Here Again." There's some bad humor, and Dolly is still shouting to get attention. They're doing a chorus line, a kick line.
They are.
People think I'm kidding about this. I'm not.
I'll make sure I put that panel up on YouTube.
Yeah, the kick line panel. Please do.
Yep.
Please do. And Dolly yells at them, and Dolly never yells. And she has an announcement, Brian. What is that announcement?
The announcement is that Damon Hellstrom, the son of Satan, and Patsy Walker, Hellcat, are getting married Saturday. This being Friday morning, that doesn't give the Defenders all that much time to buy some fancy new clothes and get out to Greentown in time for the ceremony.
Yep. Yeah, well, and there's some more dancing and celebration.
But
Dolly
not
says,
everyone is happy with this.
Yeah, well, here's another point where I'm going to say, I think that the statute of limitations is up on whatever drugs that Mark DeMatteis was doing at the time, because I really do want to know where the hell does... Go ahead. Reintroduce Buzz Baxter to our listeners, Brian.
That's right. Now, you'll remember Buzz. He was the supervillain Mad Dog. He's also Hellcat's ex-husband. We've seen him in the Defenders before. He was one of the people that the Tribunal was questioning.
Yeah, but not in this costume. Not Mad Dog.
But, during that time, we got his backstory, and we learned that he's Mad Dog. Well, now he's in full Mad Dog costume.
And Mad Dog costume, by the way, people should be aware that the mask for Mad Dog is basically brown Batman cowl.
Yep.
I mean, it is exactly Batman's cowl, only brown.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And there's nothing when they show Buzz Baxter, there's nothing to suggest that he's physically, mutated so that he can get in the poses that he's in here. And the last thing I want to say about Mad Dog, and if you're getting the impression I don't like this character, and I think the character is silly, you are right, is the fact that you have this Batman cowl and he has a mustache. It's just silly looking.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with you.
I wish he had a full face mask, but anyway.
I love the Defenders Rogues Gallery. Nebulon, Yandroth, Zemnu the Titan, the Headmen, the Elf with a fucking gun. But I never had love for Mad Dog.
Good, because then we won't have to fight about it. But anyway.
So it turns out Mad Dog is back working for the Secret Empire again, and he reports into his bosses, and they say, you are going to require assistance in this matter. The Empire will dispatch operatives, and Buzz lashes out. He says, I'm Mad Dog. I don't need anybody. And the Secret Empire says, you are an agent of the Secret Empire. You need what we say you need. Stand by for further instructions. Buzz is not too happy about that.
Right. Yes. And stand by while we cut back to the other story here. Now look, go ahead, Brian, because I got to say that the thing that bothers me more than anything, yes, there's a lot of explanation here of this alien race who are set, it talks about their world and their religion and the purge and their history and all this stuff. And it would be interesting if it ever really goes anywhere. But the whole thing, and forgive me, J.M. DeMatteis, but the whole thing is just invented and told in narrative captions to further explain why these four Defenders can't ever work together again.
Right. Like I said, I think if this hadn't all been compressed into 38 pages, if it had been given a few issues to breathe,
well, if it had been played out as an adventure rather than just as a sort of narrative wrap-up.
Right. Right. But basically, the alien race shows up to Earth and takes revenge for the death of the prince by dropping a poison gas, the most awful weapon in their arsenal. They've never dared use it on their own planet, but they use it on Earth, right. And all living things die over the course of a century. Right. And 2 centuries, the ruins man left standing collapse. And as we said, by the mid-24th century, Earth breaks up and drifts away as asteroids into the cold, cold void.
Right. When Doctor Strange realizes the truth of this, and the others haven't seemed to have been able to get it through their heads yet, it's up to him to finally break the news to them that the only way to avoid being responsible for the murder of our world is to disband, to never more join together as Defenders.
That's right. Because this is just one possibility, one future. But the problem is, it's the 4 of them.
Right. It's the 4 of them working together. Now, what I find really interesting here is, and again, I'm not suggesting that I wasn't affected and moved by the way that DeMatteis portrays it. But the thing that I find amusing here is that you look at it, and you look at the fact that Hulk and Namor and Silver Surfer are upset by this, and yet they've spent 125 issues not wanting to be members of this team.
Well,
not
see,
the Hulk,
I
but
love that.
Namor and the Silver Surfer have spent 125 issues not wanting to be members of this team.
And I love that. Again, that's where I think it could have benefited from, a lengthier story. Because for 124 issues, they haven't wanted to band together, and yet they always come together. And it would have been a really good examination of the bonds of friendship and etc. But yeah, we get one panel of two panels of them upset that this comes to an end. And then the Tribunal sends them back home.
Right. Then we cut back to the elf with a gun. Actually, he's the elf with a cigar now. Telling us that he's getting pretty good at this narration stuff. And giving us these three former X-Men, Beast and Iceman, are talking to Angel about the fact that he was in sad shape recently. He'd been living underground with the Morlocks. Callisto basically tried to force him into marriage. Storm saved him from Callisto and the Morlocks. He says he felt violated. And as if Callisto had pushed a button and brought all the psychological sludge up from my subconscious, as if every weak link in my mental armor had just snapped.
Right.
So he decided he hasn't really accomplished much.
And we get a little editorial note there. See upcoming issues of Marvel fanfare for the whole story. So you know what? That confirms right there. It was not Seraph in that Marvel fanfare story I'm thinking of. It must have been Siren, who looks remarkably like Seraph.
Right.
As a name that begins with S.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, Angel feels confident for the first time in years. The three of them return to I guess, is this Dolly's house for the wedding?
Yep.
And they come in after their afternoon together. We have Valkyrie seems to be. Is this a bust of? Is it Archon?
I thought it was Odin.
It might be Odin.
I'm looking at it in black and white.
Yep.
From the Marvel Essentials collection.
It's probably Odin. Beard. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But in any case, Dolly and Moondragon and Gargoyle and Valkyrie are there. They're talking about, and Beast decides to finally tell them what's been on his mind for a while. I've been thinking long and hard about it since Dolly brought it up at dinner the other night. I've been a lot of things in my life, and I've done a lot of things too, but nothing has satisfied me the way superheroing has. As a mutant, as a biochemist, as a man, that's the road that served me best, and I'm ready to make a commitment. So he basically says, you're all cordially invited to join me in making the Defenders a real team for the first time.
Yeah, he says, none of this non-team garbage, none of these half-baked heroics.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, the first one to respond is Moondragon, who says, Moondragon has no intention of joining such an absurd aggregation. And Hank says, believe me, Baldy, you weren't included in the offer. Moondragon thinks a lot of herself, but rightly so from my perspective. She just needs to be, I don't know, have some more manners, I guess, with people who are her friends.
I like her more than Hellcat.
I like them together. You know when I like Moondragon? I like Moondragon. So I like her actually in this series. I really do as a character, especially as the series continues.
Absolutely.
But I also like her massively much later in War of the Realms or whatever, not War of the Realms, but whatever that's called, the massive cosmic Marvel crossover in which she and Phyla Vel are girlfriends. They're a couple.
Yep.
Phyla Vel is at the time Quasar. And that character arc is fantastic.
It absolutely is. Absolutely. But we then transition to the Quinjet, and everybody's on their way to the wedding. They're all dressed up. Gargoyle is concerned because he called Doctor Strange to tell him about the wedding, and Doctor Strange wouldn't come to the phone. Wong informed him that the Doctor was holed up with Hulk, Namor, and the Surfer. and Beast and Valkyrie say, don't worry about it. We're sure he'll be there.
Yeah. Beast is in a blue and silver tuxedo. Gargoyle is in what appears to be a zoot suit, which I appreciate.
We get a nice reminder that Moondragon is the one who first took Patsy to Titan and trained her with her psionic powers.
Yeah.
And then Valkyrie says, indeed, and you're the one who self-righteously stripped her of those powers as well, as you'll remember back in Defenders 77. And then we get what is probably my favorite scene, other than the superheroes drunk driving the Quinjet. Moondragon snaps at Valkyrie. She says, "Don't you dare address me in that tone, woman." And Valkyrie grabs her by the face and says, "And don't you make me forget my vow to Odin, woman." I love Valkyrie. It is, once again, that one panel sums that character up so well for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And then we get the gathering, the wedding. We get the Beast offering the pastor some fried chicken. We get Patsy's father in there now that she knows the devil is not her father.
Right.
We get Patsy's father and Dolly having a reunion. We've never seen those characters together in the comic before.
Right.
And then Patsy comes in her dress, looking gorgeous. And even though you hate her, Brian, you have to be happy for her on this day.
I gotta admit, Perlin and Demolder, she looks gorgeous here in this panel. But not everyone thinks that she does, because lurking outside the wedding is Buzz Baxter in his Mad Dog uniform, but he's not alone.
Yes, he's not only is he not alone, but he is with the least of the Defenders Rogues Gallery, the Mutant Force.
That's right. When we first covered them on the show, of course we described them at the time, but it wasn't until I started putting episodes of Defenders dialogue on YouTube and actually people could see some of what Mutant Force looked like. Then we got all kinds of comments like, "You got to be kidding me."
No, the thing is, Mutant Force looked like the generic, like if you made a 1980s generic cartoon, or if you were a fifth tier comic book company in the 1980s and you needed some villains or heroes, this is what they look like. I mean, they're basically they're some guys in sweaters, basically, and gloves. They all have gloves except the guy who has metal crab claws,
right,
for hands.
Shocker, who has metal crab claws?
Because of course he does. I love the fact that even the guy with the lizard head has gloves on, or appears to. Anyway, so continue. All right, so Mad Dog sees the Mutant Force. He attacks them because he doesn't want their help. They convince him that he has to have help, but he's going to tell them what to do. He's going to be the leader here. And Mad Dog and the Mutant Force together attack Patsy and Damon's wedding.
That's right. And in pure soap opera drama, the preacher says, "If there's anyone present who can give sound reason why this marriage should not take place, let him speak now or forever hold his peace." Boom! Mad Dog and Mutant Force smash into the church.
And of course, Mad Dog, let's remind you, everybody, is Buzz Baxter, Patsy's ex-husband.
That's right. He says, "I've got my reasons, holy man. Blasted good reasons."
Now, the pastor passes out just from shock, and no one is more infuriated at this interruption than Isaac Christians, the gargoyle, because he's offended at this affront to the sanctity of marriage.
That's right. He says, "Of all the unmitigated gall, don't you even have a shred of decency in you? Doesn't the sanctity of marriage mean anything to you? No, I can see that it doesn't. Well, then, it's time somebody taught you."
Yeah.
And Beast interrupts him and says, "No, you're not going off half-cocked. We're a team, and we're going to act like a team."
But then they don't.
Valkyrie didn't get that memo.
Yeah. So the fight ensues. because Valkyrie did not get the memo. Moondragon starts kicking the crap out of Mad Dog, which I really appreciate. First, physically, because of course she's a very skilled martial artist, and then attacking his mind. He does get the better of her after that point, which leads to Damon Hellstrom versus Mad Dog, which is, in short order, Mad Dog just tosses him because he has no dark soul anymore. And then it's face-to-face. It's Buzz versus Patsy.
Yep.
We cut outside. We have whatever random member of Mutant Force this is fighting Valkyrie. The reptile guy is fighting the beast. You know, you could see how involved I am with this battle.
Yeah. The only thing of import here, Patsy and Buzz are fighting.
Yes, that's the key element here.
Right, and Buzz bites her. We finally see that he's not just a guy in a brown suit. He does, in fact, have fangs like a dog, and he bites her. And we find out that his bite paralyzes her body and warps her senses. So she's stunned, she's paralyzed, and now he's going to rip out her throat.
Go ahead.
But, you know, Moondragon steps in while everybody else is fighting the rest of Mutant Force. Moondragon steps in. Now, she's weakened by the headband, but she will not stand by and allow this woman to be slain. She tells him, I will not stand by and allow this woman to be slain by the likes of you. Now, I read that as, if it's somebody worthy, I'll let them kill her. It's not going to be you. She zaps Mad Dog with a psionic blast, but because of the headband, she can't do much.
And his insanity, that's the thing. She said, because he's insane, it's harder for her to get control of him.
Right. And then Damon Hellstrom, son of Satan, one of our favorites, who you might have forgotten is actually in this issue. It's his wedding, too.
Yep.
Moondragon tells him, I've done what I can. You're her only hope. And we get a beautiful scene with Damon, but the art does not work for me. It's so rushed here. But basically, Damon beats the shit out of Mad Dog.
Yep. Yep. And then they have a moment. Angel and the others come back inside from fighting outside. Says, everything okay in here? And Patsy says, it will be, Angel, just as soon as we clean this mess up and get on with the wedding. Which they do. The Beast is celebrating. There's all, and the Beast is celebrating not just because of this wedding, but because he's so excited that these new defenders worked together. He says they were magnifique today, pure magic. They've got what it takes to be a team together, and he's basically trying to persuade them to go along with his plan.
That's right.
This is at least Angel and Iceman he's persuaded.
And then Gargoyle and Valkyrie and Moondragon agree as well.
Yeah, and Beast is shocked because, once again, Moondragon was not invited. But she says, Odin sent me to Earth to rediscover my lost heritage, to study humanity at Brunhilde's side. Thus, where the Valkyrie goes, there goes Moondragon.
And then we get long live the new defenders. And we get a wonderful panel of them. But somebody off panel says, aren't you forgetting something, Hank? What of the old defenders? And we see Hulk, Doctor Strange, Surfer, and Namor have arrived at the wedding.
And Doctor Strange says this moment is karma. It's a perfect moment. And then, without explanation, without explaining, they're there for 30 seconds. It's like Trump visiting the MLK Memorial yesterday. They come in for 30 seconds and they leave. So they come in, they say, yep, well, we're the defenders of old, and we can never more mold their future. We hand it over to you to do with as you will. Good luck. And they take off.
Yep.
And Iceman says, what was that all about? Moondragon says, I think they just gave us their blessings. And since we have the elves here, Brian, we'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah. So, the elf with a gun number 1 says, so that's the scoops, ladies and gents. Out with the old and in with the new. He then threatens to narrate the next issue, but the other elf shows up and says the Tribunal's looking for you and drags him away. And thus we come to the end.
The end and the beginning.
That's right.
So that's yes. I am glad. I feel like the transition of all of this, wasn't as exciting as it could have been. But I'm glad we can now move on to all of the things. And I have a feeling, Brian, about this. And maybe you've had this feeling too, because, look, as writers, sometimes we pretend we know what we're doing, or we pretend we're always on the ball. But I know for myself, a lot of times when I'm excited about the thing that's about to happen,
right.
Sometimes I rush, and sometimes I don't take as much care with the thing that I'm currently writing, whether it be this scene or this chapter, if I'm really excited about the next one. And I wonder if maybe that's part of this, or maybe it was just trying to cram a lot of things into a couple of issues so that he could move on to the new Defenders.
I don't know. We'll ask him when he's on. I know it's going to be interesting for me to reread these. Now, when this transition happened and we got to the new Defenders, I don't know, what were you and I? We were probably early high school at that point, right? Freshmen or sophomores?
Yeah, something like that.
I remember, I still read it every month.
83 is the end. It ends in 83.
Okay.
So
I was still reading it every month, but I had discovered girls at that point,
mm-hmm.
and I discovered heavy metal and marijuana. And so I remember having a fondness for them, but I haven't gone back and reread them.
Yeah.
Since. I've reread the Gerber run. I've reread Six Fingered Hand, but this will all be kind of new to me again. So I'm looking forward to what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because I did not read all of this stuff until well into college, because I stopped reading comics for a period of probably about 5 years. Until one of my college roommates, my sophomore year, got me back into it, and so I would have had to go back and collect these again. So I didn't read these probably until the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s.
Right.
So yeah, all very interesting. But anyway, here we go. Excelsior, Brian.
Excelsior, Chris. We'll see you next week, folks.
You're listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to. Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything moist. You gotta roll that out.
See, it makes me do weird things. I don't like it.
God damn it.
I'd
be going down on myself?
Shit. Hey guys, it's Bill,
Mick,
Maya,
and Junior
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows. Three guys with beards: Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybury, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast, on
Brian Keene of The Horror Show, Chuck Buda, and Armand Rosamillia of The Mando Method. Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans. Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith. John Urban, sick of ink stains.
Biz Zung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.